Hey everyone, it's Vontag here. I wanted to give a quick look at how I do my frequency separation for my editing. I've had many questions as to how I do this, so I figured I might as well just record a video and show everyone how I do this. I'm not going to get into what frequency separation necessarily is, because there's plenty of videos that exist out there that are going to do a better job than I will. So I just want to jump right in. So I have an action set up to run frequency separation for me. It just makes my life simpler. I recommend that you just either create an action for it or download one. They're pretty easy to find. But so what I do once I get to the Gaussian Blur stage of frequency separation is I like to get it, and this is going to be very much a picture by picture basis. Like right now, I'm just looking at this cosplayer's face, and I want to pick a radius that's going to allow just the start of some blemishes to come through. So I'm thinking about 7.5 is starting to look around there. Correct. I wouldn't worry about being too exact with this. You'll kind of get a good eye after you do this a couple of times. So I'm going to apply that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate the low frequency layer, or the layer where the color exists. And then I'm going to, for now, hide the high frequency layer. To be clear, I don't necessarily think this is the be all end all way of retouching. I don't think it's the necessarily even a very great way of retouching. I find that it works well for me, and I get really solid results, and I think it works really well for cosplay. I think if I do this method on like normal portraits, it tends to kind of err a bit too much on the too perfect side of things, and it looks a little wrong. So I end up, if I do it, I will do it with a lighter hand. So now that I've duplicated that low frequency layer, what I want to do is I want to grab my mixer brush tool. So I have it as its own tool. If you can't find it, it will be under the brush tool normally. So got the mixer brush tool selected, and up at the top of the screen here, you're going to want your wetness to be set at 50%, load 100%, mix 100%, flow at 100%. You want this button pressed in, which is the one that is telling it to not pick up the color from each stroke. And then you also want this one turned on and this one turned off. And just so the idea there is what the mixer brush tool is it kind of treats your picture like it is a oil painting, and what you're going to be doing is going and kind of mixing those oil paints together. Why we don't want to pick up colors is going to be very obvious if you try to do it without that, because it's going to start just, you're going to pick up the color and apply it to a place where you don't want the color, and it's going to look really bad really quickly. As for why the wetness is at 50, the load's at 100, the mix is at 100, I can't specifically tell you why I think those are best. That's just kind of where I ended up landing on, that I found comfortable. The flow you want at 100% though, because I think you just want, that you don't want it to be have any opacity to it. You want it to be full. So with that mixer brush tool, and I have I'm using a tablet, so I think it makes it a little easier to paint. So I'm gonna go in, and you can see see on the her cheek here, see those blemishes, and I'm gonna go in and I'm just gonna lightly brush these out, and I'm gonna use light back and forth motions, just kind of try and smooth those areas out. Because like if I do a big stroke, you'll be able to see it. I'm like pushing the colors around, but it kind of gradually falls off. So as I go, so it ends up working out really well for like this kind of blending I want to be doing. So I'm going to go around and do that. If you have trouble seeing what you're doing, because like all the tones kind of just are a little bit too close to each other, and it's hard to kind of recognize exactly what you're doing, I recommend you applying a solar curve to your image. So I have an action set up for that, and what it does is it just makes everything look ridiculous and super contrasty. So what that is, it's a curves adjustment layer, and if you look at it, it's just these four humps. Sometimes if you find the four humped version to not be clear enough, I have one that has six humps that kind of can help. Like for this image, I think it actually makes it clear. So like you can see kind of how like on her cheek here, her upper cheek, that tone is coming in a little bit further. So I'm going to go back to that, make sure my low frequency layer is selected, and I'm going to start blending more. And you can really see when I'm working on the low frequency layer, like you can see what you're doing a lot easier. I recommend turning it on and off frequently, because if you're just working on this layer, you can tend to just get lost with your edit a bit and over edit things. So be mindful of that. This way of doing things also kind of exists a bit somewhere in between retouching and dodging and burning, because you're really affecting the highlights and shadows of the image. So you're doing like some level of dodging and burning too. So this is me quickly and sloppily doing things here, but let's say like right now I'm pretty close to happy with how those skin tones are looking. So now we can apply the high frequency layer. So like if I turn it on and off, you can really see how those skin tones are have smoothed out a lot. I'm a believer that the skin tones actually make a bigger difference than the skin texture in reading a skin is smooth. Obviously, this still needs more work right now, so we're going to go in and we're going to go back to the high frequency layer, and we're going to select the clone stamp tool. You can use the healing brush tool or the spot heal tool as well. I sometimes will use it, but for this I tend to prefer the clone stamp tool. And make sure though that your sample is set to current layer, because if you have it set to current and below and you try to do it, you're going to get this like weird result, and that's not what you want. So set it to current layer, and come in and just sample and just take out the areas that we don't like. In this, because the you worked on that color layer before, you don't need to work nearly as hard on this to get the results that you want. Once again, I'm doing this kind of quickly and sloppily. Take things at your own pace. I tend to do this. This tends to be one of the more tedious processes of editing for me. But the reason I like clone stamp tool for this though is because you're not really working with the colors. It doesn't matter where you're grabbing the source from as much, and then that way you can really make sure that you're grabbing a texture that's nearby, so that the texture makes sense. Like the goal here is we're really not trying to eliminate the texture at all. We want to keep the skin texture intact. We just want it to be a really nice skin texture. So getting there. After this little section, that's probably good for an example. So I'd probably keep going a lot further on this, but you get the general idea. So if I show kind of the before and after of this, we still kept, like, as you can see by me zooming in, like the skin texture is still there, but because we were working on the color layer, that kind of the differences in colors we were able to blend out, and I think that really helps smooth out the face a lot. Obviously, this one needs more work, but I'm just trying to give a general guide as to how I do this. What I sometimes will like to do with these, and this is really easy to make mistakes with. So like if you're on the low frequency layer, you can really start messing around with the shadows. Let's say, you know, we wanted to smooth out those shadows on the bottom of the face a lot, so we can go in here, and I'm going just nuts on this. So I'm going and really changing up how the shadows look in this image. Be careful around edges, because like you can see I've kind of bled a little bit of color into the white part of her costume right there. But you can see how that potentially can do a lot for your shadows. If you have any questions on how this process works, feel free to hit me up. More than happy to answer things. Hopefully this gives you a pretty clear insight as to how I do this, and it's not too confusing. Thanks for watching, and have a good one.